the ghost in the forest. It was a warm summer evening when a group of 5 friends set out on a hike through an old forest near the town. They had been planning this trip for a long time, hoping to enjoy nature and escape the hustle and bustle of city life. The trail seemed simple, and the group cheerfully walked along the narrow path, listening to the birds singing and the rustling of leaves. As the sun began to set, the forest started to feel more ominous. The friends noticed that the path became less distinct, and soon they realized they had lost their way. Panic began to grip the group as they understood that the forest looked the same from all directions, and none of the familiar landmarks were visible. They needed to get back to the trail. If they headed east, they would definitely reach the river, and from there, they could orient themselves. They followed this plan, but the forest grew denser, and it became increasingly difficult to walk through. The sky darkened, and only the faint light from their flashlights helped them avoid tripping over roots and falling into pits. They were sure they were going the right way. They couldn't have gotten that lost. Suddenly, they heard quiet sobbing. It was coming from somewhere deep in the forest, and everyone froze, listening to the strange sound. It wasn't one of them. The sobbing continued, growing louder as if someone was approaching them. Perhaps it was a lost child. They decided to follow the sound, hoping to help whoever was in need. They ventured deeper into the forest, and the sobbing grew clearer. Soon they saw a figure standing by a large tree. It was a girl, dressed in a white dress that glowed in the dark. Her face was distorted with pain, and tears streamed from her eyes. They asked if she was okay, approaching cautiously. The girl looked up at them, desperation in her eyes, and whispered for help, saying she couldn't find her way home. One of the friends tried to get closer, but another held them back. Something felt off. How did she end up here alone, in such a place? The girl suddenly disappeared, leaving the friends in bewilderment. The forest grew even quieter, with only the wind rustling through the treetops. Fear began to creep in. They needed to get out of there. The place was not what it seemed. They started moving faster, hoping to find a way out of the forest. But with each step, new mysteries and fears emerged. The forest seemed alive, unwilling to let them go. Soon they heard the same sobbing again, now coming from a different direction. Their hearts pounded. They knew they were not alone in this forest. The friends gathered in a circle, trying to decide what to do next. The forest seemed like an endless maze, and each step took them deeper into its dark heart. The girls' sobbing echoed around them, surrounding them from all sides. They had to stay together. No one could afford to stray from the group. They continued walking, trying to ignore the strange sounds. Suddenly, an old, abandoned cabin appeared before them. The door was ajar, and a faint light emanated from inside. Maybe someone lived there. They should check it out, hoping for help. They approached the cabin and cautiously entered. Inside, it was dark and damp. The walls were covered in mold, and the floorboards creaked under their feet. In the corner of the room stood an old wooden bed, on which sat the same girl. She murmured that they had come back. They asked who she was and why she was there. The girl lifted her head, revealing eyes full of bottomless sorrow. Her name was Katya, she explained. She had died in this forest many years ago. The forest wouldn't let her leave. She had tried to find a way out, but couldn't. The friends understood they were dealing not with a mere child, but a spirit trapped in this place. They asked how they could help her. Katya pointed to an old chest in the corner of the cabin. Inside the chest were her belongings. They needed to be buried under an old oak tree. Then she would find peace. The friends cautiously opened the chest. Inside, they found an old doll, a book, and a small mirror. These items seemed ancient but well preserved. They agreed to do it, but they needed to find the oak tree. Katya nodded and stood up. She would show them the way. They left the cabin and followed the girl. The forest was full of strange shadows and whispers, and each step felt heavy. Finally, they reached a huge, ancient oak tree standing in a small clearing. This was the place. They began digging a hole under the oak tree. When they finished and placed Katya's belongings in the ground, the forest suddenly grew silent. All sounds vanished, and a deep stillness settled over them. Katya approached and smiled, thanking them. She began to fade away, turning into a light mist that quickly dispersed in the wind. The forest filled with sounds again, but now they seemed less threatening. They had done it. Now they needed to find their way home. They retraced their steps and soon saw familiar landmarks. The forest no longer seemed so menacing, and the path to the exit was clear. As they finally reached the trail, the sun began to rise, lighting their way home. The friends walked in silence, reflecting on what had happened. They knew they would never forget this night and their encounter with Katya's spirit. The forest, once merely mysterious, had become a place where they had left a part of their souls. When they returned to town, no one spoke of what had happened. This story remained with them forever, a reminder that not everything in the world can be explained by logic and science. Sometimes the past finds us in the most unexpected places, and all we can do is help those who cannot find peace.